Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We are here with Brian Fink. Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's going on, Ashley?
Oh, not much. Just sitting here chugging down like a fifth coffee today.
Yeah, that's right. So everybody who's joining us now, Ashley and I were comparing our caffeine intake. Just to let you know, I am loaded up on Starbucks, cold brew coffee, a Red Bull, and a cup of tea because if you can hear it in my voice, I did lose my voice earlier this weekend, and but we're going to try to make through it. I can't apologize enough for the sound of my voice.
You sound fine to me. I think the caffeine has rectified. So this is going to become a mind-blowing event. So we're just going to banter here while everybody logs in. You are here for how to hire 1,000 software engineers, and does the market actually hate you? So we're going to run through that. This is a ton of information today. I think we have like 44 slides. Brian, do you mind going to? Yep, there we are. And here is the plan. You are in listen only mode. That means that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. But please don't let it stop you from asking all the questions you need. Use the questions panel in your sidebar to speak to Brian. I will relay those questions over to him. If there's anything that can wait till the end of the show, we'll do it at the end of the show. Share. We are live. Please use the hashtag #RDaily. Wait, hashtag to share on social media, and you will receive a copy of the slide deck and the recording after the webinar. So please keep an eye on your inbox. So Brian, do you mind going to the next slide?
Yeah,
So
yeah. So usually, if you've been on one of my webinars before, you know that I usually am pretty lighthearted, and I usually invoke Futurama or The Simpsons. But today, I was surprised to see what Ashley had put together for this presentation. Is I'm actually going to be invoking the Avengers and Avengers Endgame. So if you've seen the movie, you know that then you won't, nothing will be spoiled for you. But if you haven't seen the movie, there may be a few spoilers. About me, real quick, is I am a senior technical recruiter at RentPath here in Atlanta, Georgia. Also, fun fact about Atlanta, Georgia. If you have ever been out to an HRTX recruiting daily event, the first one of the year is coming up in Atlanta, and it's going to take place in late March. So I want to go ahead and plug that, as well as say everybody should come hang out in my awesome city. We are ready for you. Even though we had snow on, and we're going through the 4 seasons of the year. We had snow on Saturday, and it is up to a brisk 71 today. So, what are we going to get into today? I think that the slide said that we were going to talk about hiring 1,000 software engineers and why does the market hate us. I'd actually like to address the elephant in the room. I don't think recruiters are hated. I think that maybe the reason that it's so hard right now is that there have never been more recruiters recruiting for the same types of roles. There's definitely a uptick and an upswing in recruiter activity, and there is a very tight labor market. So I don't think anybody hates us, but I also think that what we have to do is we have to deliver a great candidate experience to make sure that we are really satisfying the courtesy of the market. To get things started, I want to kind of go through what we're going to talk about today and about candidate experience. We're going to talk about your needs as a recruiter, what that means when you're writing the quote unquote staid job description. We're going to blow that up. We're going to talk about building talent pipelines, what it looks like when you're conducting interviews, managing that relationship with the candidate, measuring and optimizing your success, and ultimately providing a positive candidate experience. I think that if you can do those 7 things, that you can hire 1,000 software engineers. Full disclosure, I did not hire 1,000 software engineers last year, but I did come awfully close. So to that, understanding your needs, this is when you're going to sit down with your hiring manager and you're really going to get into understanding what their must-haves are. One of the things, though, that I recommend is not just sitting down with the hiring manager. I think it's important that you have a conversation with the team, specifically who are the team leads, who was the person who was most recently hired into the team, so that you can figure out what it actually means for them to need this individual on the team and what skill set, what problems they're really going to solve. You're going to really want to take a look at the essence of where that junior developer on the team is succeeding, where they've got their strengths, where they've got their weaknesses, and how another hire to the team can complement those. And also at the same time, accelerate the senior developers or senior engineers, the most experienced engineers that are on your team. Must-haves and nice-to-haves. One of the things that I talked about with Ashley last week is that we were having a conversation about natural language search. And if you're looking for a Python developer, it's nice to look for Python and Django and Flask and all those different technical skill sets. But what you need to really understand is what are the must-haves and what are the nice-to-haves. So for instance, if this person is an engineer who's going to be working with a lot of machine learning, is that experience that they need to have with their Python experience? Do they need to have had some exposure to artificial intelligence, or would it be nice to see somebody who appears from one of those companies? Because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you understand those core functionalities that somebody is going to address and the problems that they're going to solve. And then the other thing that I would say is, do you get ahead of yourself with the job description? How many times have, this is a little awkward for me to do a webinar as opposed to a presentation up in front of a group of people, but I would say, how many times have you had a hiring manager or hiring team that simply throw you a job description and they don't want to have that intake meeting, or they make that meeting something that's optional on their schedule that they don't attend? And what I'd say is, are you getting ahead of yourself and going ahead and saying, is this hiring manager really going to be vested in their success, or am I going to go ahead and start sourcing on this without having a conversation about what the must-haves and the nice-to-haves are? Ultimately, this comes down to, do you know the role like the back of your hand? So what are the background skills that you're looking for? Again, as we're talking about software engineers, software developers, I say, does this person have a technical product mindset? What's the industry experience they need to have? Do they need to come from a similar industry? What are their written communication skills like? We're looking for people who are great coders, and we're also looking for people that, when you think about distributed workforces, that they've got really good communication skills on Slack, so that they can, or if you're using something like Microsoft Teams, so that they can really explain and expound upon the errors that they found, or the challenges that they're seeing, or the roadblocks that they need to overcome. So you really want to make sure that you're understanding what this person, like what skill set they're going to specifically have that's going to allow for them to really comport not only with your prime directive for whatever the role is. Prime directive, you can tell I watched a lot of Star Trek last night. And you're also looking specifically to find what skill sets these people are going to use to make their job and to make the jobs of the people that they're surrounding themselves with that much easier. Now, let's talk about what personal attributes this person should have. Is that typically we find hiring managers who say, I strike this candidate because they're not a cultural fit. What exactly does that mean? Is this a team that is made up of junior developers and you're looking for another senior engineer, somebody who can really mentor and help grow that team? Is this a team that is going to be very analytical driven, and you find that the person that you're speaking with or you're interviewing with doesn't have that analytical drive that you were looking for? This is when you look at the different team and the makeup, like each team may have its own characteristics, especially as to how they run their Scrum or their Kanban sessions. I know that Scrum and Agile, that's supposed to be a standard methodology, but sometimes you have teams that are pushing code every other day, and that they're doing code deployments much quicker than what may happen in a traditional Agile environment. Another thing that you need to know is what differentiates our company. If somebody says, hey, I want you to recruit engineers out of Facebook, understand, what is it that makes your company different than Facebook? And it isn't just about your company, it's also about the team, the managers, what the offer is going to look like, as well as the company culture. In fact, I put all this together in a manager meeting document that you can take a quick look at. This is where I specifically use for my intake sessions with hiring managers, where I try to make sure that I understand 3 things that make the company different and distinct particularly the problem that we're trying to solve. This is even, for me being at RentPath for 2 years, this is still a question that I ask whenever there's a role that I'm looking at, because the marketplace is that competitive. What makes our team that much different? Give me 3 things. What makes our managers and our management philosophy that much different? Looking for 3 things. With the offer, how competitive, and you might want to get involved with compensation, you might want to get involved with them early on in the process. What's going to make that offer compelling? What's going to make that offer different? Are you looking at the emotional currency of a candidate? Do you really understand the personalization that needs to go into the offer delivery? And then also understanding your culture. What makes your culture different? And culture should not be confused with snacks or ping pong tables. Those are definitely elements of culture. But what I find when I'm talking to engineers and they ask me about work-life balance is that I'm telling them about the 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. core hours that we have. And those are things that differentiate who we are and what it is that we're doing. And those are all information that I take in through the manager meeting requisition intake form. We're going to get into something that's called job carding in a second. I'll make sure that there's a slide, or I'll make sure that there's a handout there for you as well. But these are the types of questions and exercises that I'm going through with a manager and their team, just to make sure that we really are differentiating ourselves, that we're not just saying, oh, we're a technology company and this is why. We're able to really produce a solid EVP this way. Writing a job description. Now, this is where I typically say, give me a show of hands, who here loves writing a job description? Job descriptions are, they're old and static. I would say if my friend Katrina Kibben were on this webinar, she could probably, and if you're not following her or not signing up for 3 Years Media's weekly newsletter, I definitely suggest that you do so. But what we're looking at here is that the traditional job description really is not effective anymore. It's not working. If it were working, then you wouldn't have commercials by Indeed saying that 60% of job seekers that came to their site found the job that they were looking for. It would be 100% of job seekers found what they're looking for. So what I want to do is I want to shift your overall thought process for just a second about what you think should be in a job description. Should it be what tools they need to accomplish the job? Or should it be written in such a form and fashion that you are exhibiting not just the skill sets that they need, but how they're going to grow their skill sets, what they're going to do in the role, the problems that they're going to face, the problems that they're going to follow through on, the challenges that they're going to seek. Let's say, for instance, you're recruiting for a software as a service company, and this company will go ahead and say that they're in shipping or logistics. One of the things that you're trying to solve for is how you get product from point A to point B and do it in a way that's more efficient and effective than Amazon. That's huge. That's a big shift in what you're putting down on the paper, as opposed to you will design software that will comport with agile standards. It's really getting into the muck of things. It's really getting energized about how you can showcase not just a job, but really how they're going to grow and stretch their professional capabilities through their career. Get your hiring manager on board. I found that there are hiring managers that do want to write the job description themselves. I encourage you to do that, because that is not just taking something off your plate as a recruiter, but that's really creating a very visceral documentation of what they're looking for, how they're taking place, what they're looking to do. Showcase those motivators. Why would somebody take this job? You need to be able to spell out clearly in the job description what it is that somebody would do on day 1, what they would do on day 90, and how they would change over the course of their first year. There's a great book that was actually published probably about 7 years ago by the team over at LinkedIn. I know, a great book published by the team over at LinkedIn. But really what it did is it deciphered what you would do in terms of a tour of duty if somebody came into a role on day 1, and what it would look like if they left on after 2 years of being in the role. What would they have accomplished? What things they would have moved? And those are difficult to immediately put down on a piece of paper if you don't have your hiring manager and the hiring team involved. And then draft your bullets and timeline. Okay, bullets, when I talk about bullets, and again, Katrina and I differ on this a little bit, I like to think that job seekers like to see everything laid out in a bulleted format. Timeline, that goes back to what I said about what will you accomplish in your first 30, 60, 90, 120, 360, 720 days, and really putting that out in the job description. It isn't just that you're going to craft elegant software solutions, you're going to craft software solutions and lead a transition from a Ruby on Rails environment to a React JS environment. It's actually something that we accomplished a number of years ago here at RentPath. Did you know 72% of hiring managers say that they provide clear job descriptions, whereas only 36% of candidates can say the same? All right, so there's a disconnect. What the disconnect is that you're writing this from the view of being a hiring manager, not being a person. So what you need to do is look at the uniqueness that you put together, that you said, these are my 3 key differentiators for having this person as a manager, for having this person work as the company and our culture and this team and the tech stack that we work with. You really want to be able to paint a solid picture of the challenges that somebody is going to anticipate in the role. You really want to tell them what success is going to look like, where they're going to go, how they're going to move in the organization, where they are going to be plugged in. And don't be afraid, like I said, to strike a casual tone so your candidates perceive you as friendly or human. When you do that, though, speak from a space other than the job description. Great book that was written a number of years ago, recommended by my CHRO to all the team, and we started enabling this across the organization about 18 months ago, is forgoing job descriptions and actually creating a job scorecard for each individual role so that we understand what we're hiring for, why we're hiring for it, and again, what that person's mission is going to be, what they're going to accomplish over their first 2 to 3 years with the organization. There's a copy of the scorecard there from the, that I've adopted from the book Who, so you don't have to read through the entire book, but if you want to, it's available on Amazon. There it is. I did a selfish plug for Amazon, who I don't think is sponsoring the webinar, but to them and their success.
We're safe. We're good.
We're good. Okay. All right.
I'm sure they appreciate it though.
Yeah, this is not the webinar where I show you how to go into people's Amazon shopping lists and to extract information there. So with a job card, again, the job carding process is pretty unique. It's pretty much driving a bigger conversation around who this person is, what their responsibilities are to the team. If you think about it, it's how the work is going to be performed. It also takes into consideration the cultural attributes that you're looking for this person to put into their work. And when I say cultural, maybe I should better define that as the different personality dimensions that you're looking for somebody to deliver upon. Are you looking for somebody to have competencies that they're a strong collaborator? Do they have strong communication skills? Are they able to build talent? Are they focusing on critical thinking? This is really much more than just an exercise of putting down on a page what you're looking for in your ideal candidate. What I would also say for this is that you're looking for specific tasks that this person is going to accomplish. I can't go into it enough and say, really use this as your roadmap to figure out how somebody is going to be effective over their first 30, 60, 90 days. Write it out, have it codified what they're going to have to do to be promoted from being a software developer to being a senior software developer or being a team lead, and really have those structured out and have them connected in such a way that there's no gap between those different facets within an organization. All right, building talent pipelines. What is all this about, right? There was this great benchmark book that was put out by the team at Levera. Levera, great applicant tracking system and CRM all in one. I say great because they have kind of narrowed their scope in terms of being able to effectively help you communicate to candidates about the opportunity you're working on. It also involves a lot of scheduling features that I really like. To that, with this chart that we're looking at, this is really kind of the statistics of recruiting resources of how candidates have come into most of their, and they're using their wide array of data science to acknowledge that 50% of people that are hired did apply, 16% were referred, 3% come through an agency, and 31% are sourced. I want to focus on that 31% because I actually disagree with this chart. I think that probably that there's a greater percentage of people that are referred, especially if you have an organization that's doing the right things and you're making the referral process simple. By doing the right things, I mean, you're really engaging with your employees. You have a good reputation on Glassdoor. You are facing the community. You're doing a lot of things that involve maybe involve community involvement or community engagement. And I think that's a story that can be told also to candidates that you're sourcing, that you're cold sourcing. So let's kind of break this apart for a quick second and say how this is supposed to work so we can build those talent pipelines and those talent communities. So when we think about it, the first part is our career page. Is this a website that people are coming to that they're finding is easy, accessible, tells a story? They're not on the call, but if you have trouble telling your story, I really recommend that you reach out to Abby and the team over at Skill Scout because they do a great job of bringing job descriptions to life. One of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that your website is video intensive, right? And with that, you also have to make sure that it's mobile optimized. More and more, 9 out of 10 job seekers report that they're likely to search for a job via mobile. If you're like me and you're not a job seeker, you get an annoying message from LinkedIn once a day, pops up on my email that says these are jobs that you might be a fit for. Maybe you should apply for one. It's driven by email. It's going to take place in a browser that's less than a screen that's going to be less than 6 inches big. Is it something that can be easily digested on a mobile device? If you don't know, take a look at your career page, boot it up right now on your mobile device, and see if you've got a lot of different frames that you have to work through or if it's something that's really simple. Also, I think that the more hoops somebody has to jump through, the greater the likelihood is that they will not apply, no matter how interested, engaged they are with your EVP. When I say EVP, I mean employer value proposition, what is speaking to the candidate as to why they want to come be a member of the team. But let's go back to making it easy to apply. Do you have a button that allows them to apply through Dropbox or through Indeed, or are you only advertising on LinkedIn and you're making them go from LinkedIn to your career page, or you're making it where they can easily apply on LinkedIn? If this is a process that takes more than 3 clicks, this is probably going to decrease the amount of qualified candidates that are going to apply for the role. About that though, when you make it difficult to apply for a role, you're going to make people think that there's a lot of red tape at your organization, and that really goes against your culture, especially if you're a fast-moving startup, right? Candidates are going to want to know what it's like to work at your company. That application process, if it's really tenuous, is going to suggest to them it's going to be really tenuous to work here. There are going to be a lot of boxes that I have to check. There are going to be a lot of pieces that I'm going to have to funnel through. So instead, make sure the culture that you represent on your page, if it's fun-loving, exciting, people volunteering in the community, and it looks like it's a great place and an easy place to work at, that your application process also models that. Help them see that story with photos, with videos. I think it's important also for you to showcase employees. I think a company that does a great job of showcasing their employees and their different diversity groups that exist in the organization is Square. If you go to squareup.com and you take a look at their employee centers of excellence, you see that they've got something for everyone, that they truly are inclusive. And that begins, of course, with their careers page. Now, I also bashed job boards for just a quick second. You know, two of the most well-known are Monster and Indeed. Monster is actually going through a resurgence. If you notice through ComScore data that shows how long people are going to a website, how long they're staying on it, you've got Indeed and Monster that are kind of leading the pack, especially for sales. However, if you're looking at a job board and you're trying to extract talent from there, you need to make sure you're in the right place. Like if you're looking for financial regulators and brokers, are you on eFinancial Careers? Are you on Dice for technical talent? And being on these websites is not simply pulling resumes down. Being on these websites means that you're reaching out to your account representative and you're saying, hey, what can we do to get an article published on Indeed or on eFinancial Careers or on Dice that doesn't illustrate, quote unquote, what our environment looks like, but rather gives job seekers tips and tactics. What can we do to publicize our name in a different vein and venture so that we're really having a much more complete conversation from when that person is doing research about just a job, and we'll say a software development role, all the way to the application process. I want to pause here for a second. My voice is starting to give out.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
No, no, no. We're gonna rock this thing. We got another 30
We're gonna
minutes.
rock it.
We're gonna rock it. Sorry
Well,
about
this
that.
is a good no, no, no. Let yourself take a break for a minute. This is a really good opportunity to ask for questions. So um, we're halfway through. If you have any questions about anything that's been presented to you thus far, please start piling those in, and we can just save them till the end. So we have a nice long list to get you through. If your voice can make it, Brian.
My voice is gonna make it. We're gonna have a rocking good time.
I know it will.
Yeah. So I just want to apologize to everybody. Like my wife this morning was like, make sure you drink your tea, make sure you take this medication, make sure you take this pill. And I was like, yeah. So I'm flying, Brian. We're having fun. And if you're tuning in just now, I am in the process of losing my voice. So that'll add a little bit of comedy to our webinar. Um, about losing. Nobody wants to lose out on an employee referral, right? We want to make sure that that we're taking this seriously, that if somebody is referred to us, that we're really engaging with that individual, that we're giving them that white glove service. Reason being is that you actually have two sales that you are currently involved in when you are selling an employee referral and when you're qualifying an employee referral. And you have two qualifications as well. You are qualifying the person who presented the referral. You are saying that they value this organization, that they want to see us surge and grow. And you've got to make sure that their friend, and let's assume this is a friend, somebody that they've worked with before, not merely just some acquaintance who they said, hey, I can get, $1,500, $2,000, $5,000 as an employee referral if I refer them, that this is somebody that they themselves have vetted and they're putting their name on. So you want to make sure that you're building not only a strong employee referral process, but that process also involves a strong employee referral system and that it gives that white glove attention. Some of the examples that I would provide to you is that if you get an employee referral, you should make sure that you're reaching out to that person within 24 hours. I like to think that they kind of go to the top of the funnel because of the value that that individual has brought to the organization today, what they've done, how they've invested in the organization, and also what they perpetuate and believe that that other person will bring to the organization. Also, with employee referrals, it's been proven, it's been showcased that employee referrals stick around beyond the 2.5 year mark when they've completed their tour of duty. They're much more loyal to the organization. Also, it's been found that the referrer that they tend to stick around to the organization an additional 6 months for every employee referral that they make. So recruiting benchmarks research highlights this, and with 1 in 16 being referred candidates being hired, it makes them 10 times more efficient than a job board. It makes them that much more effective than the spend that you're contributing to, whether it's pay per click or whether it's programmatic advertising that you're spending on some of the paid job boards or job searches. Now, this is where things get really creative. I love sourcing. I love finding candidates, diamonds in the rough, more than any more than anybody else, right? You know, if William Tincup was on this call, he would tell you that he knows that he interrupts me late at night when I am sourcing, when I'm proactively finding these candidates. And sourcing today is never been more competitive. What people are losing sight of, though, is the personal attention that you have to make and the personal connection that you have to make with that candidate. Want to highlight my friend Erin Matthew. I think she does a really good job of this, is that she is reaching out to that top talent, whether when they're not looking, and she's having a conversation with them. Give you an example. She actually was at a conference and referred a candidate at the conference to me for a role that I did not yet have in existence. Met with the speaker, had a good conversation with the speaker. This was 3 months down the road before she ever entered into quote unquote my pipeline. So, we're looking for people who are ready to make a switch or make a move because that's quote unquote the easiest person to get to the finish line. You really have to look at the business's long-term goals, objectives, and start laying the conversation, laying the route to have that conversation, earning the trust to have that conversation with that individual who has been in their organization for 2+ years, who really isn't going to make a move. Why 36% of the workforce identifies it active. You do have LinkedIn. Yay, LinkedIn is amazing. I don't know who said that. That says that 90% of the entire workforce is open to a conversation about alternative opportunities. So what I would say is, if your React developer says no to you today, fine. Say, hey, I respect that. And in the next 30, 60 days, I hit them with a video of our internal boot camp that we run and say, look, we just had this boot camp that was here. We have one every quarter where we upskill our talent. This is something that you could be a part of. It's an ongoing conversation, making sure that even though, like you said, respectfully, they told you no, and respectfully, you told them, hey, I understand, not right now. Change is the only constant. I'd love to come back and have a conversation with you in the future. If that sounds canned, maybe I've been saying it for, I don't know, 9 years too many. The reality of it is that when it comes to candidate sourcing, you are finding tidbits of information about candidates along very different and non-traditional paths. I did make the joke about LinkedIn. I would say that software developers and engineers, you're probably finding out more about them on their homepage or their GitHub page, or using a tool like Seek Out that shows you something different about them, where they stand, where it is that they're compelling facts that really stand out from them. Or you're like Aaron and you're going to Reddit and you're seeing what these people are commenting on, what theories they hold to be true, what they're adding to the conversation in the discourse, or maybe you're using Discord and Slack to have that ongoing conversation and really help cultivate the community. Community cultivation. This really kind of goes back to what motivates a candidate and how you're not interviewing candidates. You're simply having a conversation. One of the ways that I begin every interview or every one-on-one that I have with an individual is I don't say, hey, I'm Brian, a technical recruiter, and I'm here to screen you for this role. I typically start the conversation by saying, hey, could you give me a 2-minute snapshot about who you are and what's really important to you? I got to credit my wife for this one. All right. She, a number of years ago, she had me read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits that are there is seeking to understand so that you can be understood. As a recruiter, we all have jobs that we are trying to sell, or that we are trying to fill, or that we are trying to procure talent for. So the initial conversation that you have with a candidate should not be one where you're trying to qualify them against a specific role. It may take a little bit longer. It may take an extra 5 to 10 minutes for you to have the conversation, but you really want to find out from them what it is that they hold to be that much viscerally important in their career, right? Or to them. Like, for instance, they might say, it's really important to me that the company that I work for might be an organization like Salesforce that actively gives back to the community, promotes its values, and really gives me something to believe in. That's great. that is the emotional currency. That is what is in it for them to have a conversation with you about your organization. Or let's say, for instance, that you're a company, what is it they like about their current role? Why do they like being in an organization like a MailChimp here in Atlanta? What would they change about their role if they could? Have they thought about what their next role is going to look like and what they want to accomplish in that next role? Ultimately, what degree of conversation or uh, what degree of learning and challenges they want to stretch their professional capabilities against. Now, look, after you've had this conversation, that you have kind of explored what's in it for them, what they're trying to do, what their emotional currency is. Actually, you know what? I didn't touch on emotional currency so much. I did touch about it with the Salesforce example, but maybe somebody says, I really want to work at a company like Turner, which here in Atlanta has one of the absolute best maternity and paternity um, uh, policies of anybody in Atlanta. And maybe they're considering having a child in the next year. Maybe that's something that's important to them, the way that they treat and respect other people. Maybe that would be a draw or a connection point that you could bring somebody into the organization by showcasing the benefits, especially if they share with you what their emotional currency is. If you're talking to somebody who's like, I make $120,000 a day, I want to make $150,000 tomorrow, great. You can qualify that they're money motivated, they're hungry for that money, especially if you're looking for a salesperson. You don't want somebody who's going to say, I only want to make $60,000 this year, not a dollar over that, right? So let's kind of identify that emotional currency and then have the conversation with a candidate if you feel that they would be successful on your team. If those core values that they've initiated a conversation about resonate with the core values of your organization, explain to them why somebody like them would be a value on their team. If you don't have a role for them today, be honest. Kind of tell them up front and say, you know, I understand that you're looking for a role that's more focused on architecture and less hands-on development. If I had a role that was 50% architecture and 50% hands-on keyboard, because everybody here codes, would that be a conversation worth having? Make those notes in your CRM, in your ATS, as to when you can come back to them and have that conversation. Tag them. If Batman were on this webinar, he would tell you that you need to tag people with opportunities in your CRM so that you can hire them when the time is right, and really invest in those tags that you would have in your CRM or ATS. About nurturing those passive candidates, there is, everybody has a Friday in their week. It could be at the beginning of their week, could be at the end of their week. There's something that I like to do, and I'll probably talk about this a little bit more about follow-up Friday, is that if you've got your top 10, 20, 30, 50 candidates, are you circling back to have a conversation with them? My conversations on Friday are only to circle back to candidates that are quote unquote warm candidates that I've spoken with before, that I've had a conversation with. What we're doing is we may be talking about, heck, a lot of my candidates, I reach out to them with Star Wars memes. We may be debating what the future holds for Star Wars on Disney Plus and talking about The Mandalorian. Or like in this deck, we might be getting excited about what's going on again on Disney Plus. Disney Plus is not paying for this webinar, but obviously I'm a subscriber because I'm really excited about the Marvel content that's coming up as well. You're also taking their temperature, right? They could have had a bad day. You might actually be, might be calling on that bad day, and you might be that shoulder for them to lean on. Um, what you constantly reminded of is that you're not there to make the pitch about the role. You're there to simply check in, see what's going on with them, be that sounding board for them, and you might even earn a referral and say, look, Joe, I know that you're constantly working on Ruby architecture. Right now, I'm looking for a junior Ruby developer in Atlanta. Can you tell me what meetup I should be going to? People love to be asked for their advice. One of the most successful email campaigns that I've ever run is candidates, prospect's name, comma, need your advice, and sending them a message that says, I'm looking for your advice. I'm not really good in this particular market. I'm more of a novice. I know that you've had years of experience. working on this particular technology or working in New York or San Francisco. Is there anywhere that you would point me to take a look or a listen to have a conversation? I have found that in about 70% of those cases, those instances, I can get that individual on the phone to be my guide, to be my Sherpa, to show me where it is that I need to go next. I'd say in about 30% of those cases, the person I reached out to may actually want to be a candidate for the opportunity. And I'd say about 10% of the time, I've made a placement from that person giving me that singular advice, and that person turning into that placement by being that Sherpa or that guide. Also, I gave an example that you said, first name, comma, need your advice. Cannot stress this enough that personalization in your outreach is probably the most paramount differentiator that you can have in a very crowded sea of in-mails, or a crowded sea of email addresses. Ask people how they're, happy Tuesday. That's one point of personalization. Noticed your work at Fiserv, comma, how's it going? I mean, period. How's it going over there? That's another point of personalization. I noticed your experience as a software developer, another point of personalization. And then one thing that I like to end with, is with your background in, and I list the 3 top technologies that they have listed on their GitHub profile that correspond with the job description or correspond to the job card that I'm working on at the time. So with your experience in JavaScript, React, and PHP, would you be open to a conversation this Tuesday or Thursday? And I'm using those different pieces so I can really identify who the person is, who I want to speak with, why I want to speak with them, and I'm making sure it's a mirror that they're also convinced of those same reasons. I would also say that you've got to make sure that you're taking notes about each of these candidates. We use Phenon People that has a great note-taking system so that we can kind of drive and put attributes in, or take notes about different attributes that people are looking for, so I can reach out to them when the time is right for them to make a move. Again, I can't stress this enough. It's the last line on the slide. It's all about the personal touch and that personal engagement with an individual. Another thing that I think is a great personal touch is we reach out to somebody who's running a meetup. Offer to buy that meetup pizza. It's going to cost you $60 on a Tuesday night. You'll be the person that they kind of give a shout out to, and you'll be a friend of the group. And also it shows that you're giving back to that community, and it gives you the opportunity to nurture multiple relationships. All right, let's get to conducting some interviews here, right? All right, so the interview process varies from company to company. For instance, I know that with my organization, I have a pre-screen with a candidate. If the candidate's interested in the opportunity, we then move forward to a tech screen, a technical challenge, and then we have a tech screen with one of the engineers or developers, and then we move to a final interview. That interview panel being a combination of about 5 or so individuals to really understand that person's skill set, and then they have a follow-up conversation with the hiring manager that usually results in the offer. What we're looking for here is that candidates can go through any myriad of steps. There's no magic set of steps to ensure that you are going to land the talent that you're looking for. I've heard of companies that do one and done interviews. I don't know how successful they are in measuring a candidate's aptitude. However, what I would say is minimally, you need to have the phone interview to make sure that you're picking up on any red flags that might exist. You really want to make sure that you're having a conversation about motivations, about that about that emotional currency that somebody is looking for. Do they have the must-haves? Do they really understand those 3 core things that the hiring manager is looking for? And then what makes them stand out? What are they doing that's a little bit different? Like, for instance, if it's a React and Redux role, which I work on all the time, maybe I'm looking for that person who not only knows React and Redux, but is also using React 16 and is starting to use hooks, and can help mature that and harden that in our organization. Also, you want to have a compensation conversation. You want to have this upfront in the phone interview there's no reason to waste anybody's time. And also I found that the person who brings up money first, that's usually the person who can steer the boat away from the rocks. That was actually taught to me a number of years ago by Doug Berg from Zap Info. That was before he was Doug Berg at Zap Info, which check out Doug Berg at Zap Info. Is you you really have to have this conversation up front because you don't want to waste the candidate's time and you don't want to waste the hiring manager's time. It's kind of a duh moment, but you'll be surprised how many candidates get submitted without information about their compensation. You also always want to leave time for questions for that candidate to ask you things about what appeared on Glassdoor, or what challenges the team is facing today. You may want to, there are a myriad of questions that a candidate can ask, but what needs to happen is at the point that they're asking these questions, the more questions they're asking, maybe it advocates the more buy-in they have to it, or the more they need to be sold into the role. I'm always wary of candidates that don't ask any questions. As for the on-site interview, I think this is a make it or break it moment for the entire recruiting process. This is where you get to show the candidate of the environment that they're going to be working in. It isn't simply just, hey, we're all going to get together in a room and we're going to have a conversation and we're going to whiteboard a solution. What you need to do, though, is that you need to work with your hiring team to remind them specifically that that you are specifically engaged with them for a myriad of different reasons, why that person is going to be a key member of the team. If you guys can hold for just one quick second, I got to extinguish real quick.
Thanks, Brian.
Sure. Any questions?
We do have a few sitting in the inbox. Would you like them now or would you like to wait?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so first question is on your intake meeting questions template. Will you be able to make that available to everyone?
Yeah, actually, if you go to that link, it should pull it from a Dropbox for you.
Okay, cool. So the links are working. And
And
next,
if they're not working, I will always give Ashley a copy of those documents. And when she emails the recording out to everybody who participated today, we'll make sure they're available for you there. Is that cool? Does that work, Ashley?
yeah, that works. Sure. Just send me those links and I'll make sure they're in the email that you receive after the webinar. We'll usually update the page and send that out about an hour, 2 hours after the webinar is finished. So,
Cool.
so do you have any pro tips on how to best prep candidates for on-sites during an on-site prep call?
Yeah. So there are a few things that I do to prep a candidate. One of which is I send them the hiring manager's LinkedIn profile, but I also send them videos of the people that they're going to be meeting with. So one of the things that's really different maybe about RentPath is that we've got we do these quarterly sessions or boot camps where we have the opportunity for everybody to present on a particular topic in addition to the instructors that we bring in. So what happens is that I'm able to provide you with both the written documentation of who it is that you're going to meet with. I'm also able to provide you with a visual as to who you're going to meet with, and whether you're having a conversation with Pasha, who is actually really into beekeeping, and I know I'm using that as an example, but it's a real ethical, like true example. That way you guys know that there's more than just one dimension to the onion, that you get to peel back the layer. I also, when I was on the agency side, I used to also send 10 questions that I said you need to make sure that you have the answer to these questions before you leave the interview, because those questions are going to help you make the right decision ultimately. Because in recruiting, this is a double-sided deal. It's a double-sided deal because there are two different people that have to make a decision about whether or not people are moving forward together. And that is a decision that is, the candidate has to say, yes, I like them enough that I would accept an offer. And the hiring manager says, I like them enough that I would extend an offer. So those are definitely maybe 3 different ways that I help prepare candidates for on-site interviews, as well as if I've got a candidate who, say for instance, I will actually offer my candidate the opportunity to have a brief 15-minute phone conversation with me before the interview to kind of, if you will, practice, so that they can kind of give their pitch as to who they are, make sure it doesn't sound too canned, making sure that they really are going into the conversation with a lot of energy and excitement.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we have, this isn't really a question so much, but it's definitely something I think would be nice to address. Rashmi says, I am afraid staffing agency experience doesn't quite allow for longer conversations. That's something that she's observed. Do you have any notes on that? I mean, I hope I didn't pull that in at the wrong part of the slide.
You know what? I think it's a great question, great conversation to have. Is that what I would say is one, I've been in an agency world. I spent the first half of my career in agency, and I realized that you have probably 30 minutes to spend with a candidate, or I would hope that you would have 20 to 30 minutes to spend with a candidate, which means that you're probably having anywhere from 10 to 14 interviews per day. You need to focus on the quality of conversation that you're having with the candidate, because you're not trying to you don't want to have one hire for every 10 candidates that you interview. You want to have one hire for every 3 candidates that you present or that you're interested and engaged in. And so I would say that that metric needs to change just a little bit, and you need to focus more on the outcomes. The ultimate outcome is if this person is getting hired and how much time you're attributing to that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. And that is it for the questions right now. If anyone has any other questions, hit us up and we'll pull them in at the end.
Cool. All right. So, one of the things that we touched on when somebody asked the question about how do you prep somebody for an interview, and I think that was really good. I want to say that that was a great question. I hope that I was able to add some value there. Is that you also want to make sure that your interviewers know what they're interviewing for. I think that nothing annoys me more when I was on the agency side that I would find out from a candidate that they went into a room and they met with one group of people and they asked them the same exact questions that the next group of people asked them, and so on down the line, as if they were trying to trick them into changing their number. So with that, I really think that you have to make sure that you know what different areas, what different competencies people are going to ask about or are going to question about, especially if you're having multiple interviews or if you're having panel interviews. You're going to want to also make sure that you have a way to bring this information together, whether it be a formal use of a Trello board, or maybe using something like the features that are in Greenhouse or in Lever to bring that information to everyone who's part of the interview process. It is important, I would say, to get this information as quickly as possible to the interviewee or to the that you want to make a decision as quickly as possible. I'm not saying that you don't need a night to sleep over it, but what you want to do is you don't want 3 or 4 days to go by without updating your candidate, letting them know where things are in the process, where they're moving forward. You really want to make sure that you're making this decision in parallel with how quickly the market is moving. When we talk about that, and I think that, and I dedicated a whole slide to this because I think that sometimes people think that the job is getting a candidate to jump through hoops, but you're wanting to make sure that it's not just about selling the candidate, but making sure that they are happy with the actual role that they are going into, that the role wasn't oversold by the recruiter, by the hiring team, by the job description. You want to make sure that you've got a good mutual fit. Again, I would say that this is about an instance where you have a double-sided deal, and that you've got to make sure that both parties are interested, engaged, qualified. Interested, educated, and qualified, as my old boss Jeff Audette used to say, when you're bringing people together to the table. With that, how do you manage talent relationships? This goes back really and builds upon how you keep tabs on candidates. what you're doing to making sure that you're having a conversation with them when it makes sense to have that conversation. Sure, follow-up Fridays, which I'm going to get to in just a quick second. But what are you doing beyond that follow-up conversation to show them that they're important, that they mean something to you, that they're the person that you're really after, that you're, when they're not ready to think about opportunities, what magic are you doing to make them think about accepting that opportunity with your organization? For example, you may source a candidate who won't be ready to think about an opportunity for another year, or you may have just turned down a candidate, your silver medalist, and you want to make sure that they're engaged. How do you keep tabs on these candidates? So I've cooked up my 5 ways that I keep up with candidates. I already mentioned follow-up Friday, that the only thing I do on Friday is follow up with my candidates. This is letting people know where they are in the process. This is letting people know, hey, I came across an interesting article. I wanted to share it with you, and sending them a message, or getting on the phone with them. That's really kind of the crux of a follow-up Friday. Justin Hill over at Amazon, he's the one that instilled this in me, and it's a tip or a trick that I've really used for the past, I guess, 4 years, really to drive additional conversations with individuals, making sure that they know that I'm engaged with them, and that I want to keep the conversation going. Speaking of keeping the conversation going, how do you do that? Well, I do that through a myriad of settings. One is Google Alerts. If you have a Gmail address, this is something that can be pretty simple for you. Is that you might want to create a Google alert for their company name or for their name, especially if you're in executive search, setting an alert for their name, so that once a day or once a week you get news updates from Google about when they've appeared in articles, when somebody's made a mention of their name, so that you really can have a conversation with them and say, hey, notice that ShareCare is going through another Atlanta company that they're ramping up their hiring. I'd really like to have a conversation with you, about what that means for you now today. Are you going to be looking at a new role? Are they going to be bringing in internal talent? Or are they going to be promoting from within? Well, if they're not promoting from within, then maybe that would cause a pause for a conversation for the two of you to have. Drippio. Drippio.com. I think that everybody has maybe their own favorite of this. Michael Krause likes BombBomb. I like Drippio. What it does is it allows me, actually, I will do a quick Drippio. I will do a quick Drippio. And I'm going to send it to Ashley because I talk to Ashley on the regular. But what this does is it embeds a quick video. Okay, when that wants to work, whenever we want to go really fast. Never wants to go really fast when I need it to.
No, never during a show.
Never during a show. So you can download Drippio. It's an extension, and what you do is you simply hit it, and it's going to turn on your camera.
Hey, Brian, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you have a question?
Oh, it looked like it sounded like it froze. I just wanted to check on you.
No worries. I just want to make sure that this Drippio is coming up so I can send you a quick video. So what it's going to happen is it will produce a quick screen for me to record. So I am going to say 1, 2, 3. Hey, Ashley, I hope you're having a great day. I just wanted to kind of get on your radar and see if you had a few minutes to talk. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Too cool. Okay, this will be included in your follow-up email, everyone. So keep an eye out for that. A link to that will be included.
Cool. All right. So we've got that. And then we have got.
And we do have a couple.
Hit me with the questions. We're all good.
Okay, here we go. I thought you would really love this one, and I think Tim thought so too. So, with personalization being key on sourcing outreach, what are your thoughts on sourcing via Instagram and Twitter?
So my thought on Instagram is I'm not really that. My thought on Instagram is we could have a very long conversation about it. I love sourcing on Instagram. I think that people have to take advantage of both the desktop solution and the mobile solution. So here's what's going on with desktop is if you source a candidate or you find a candidate, let's say you go to site:/instagram.com, quotation marks, I'm a developer, close quotation marks. And the reason I did natural language search is because people describe themselves as a developer. Um, Sorry, I got a little distracted from a Slack message. Use the, hold on one second, guys.
It's cool. Well, it
Okay,
looks like
no,
we've hit 2 o'clock. Oh, there you are.
we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. Whoever wants to stay with me can stay
Yes.
with me. So about Instagram, you can search on desktop, but the problem is communicating with people is you can't send them a DM, nor can you necessarily extrapolate an email address if you're not on mobile. So if you switch over to mobile and you type in their name, what'll come up is you'll have the option to send them a direct message. You can send up to 20 direct messages a day. There's no limit to how many characters you can send. I have found, though, that the messages that get responded to the best are the ones that do not contain links and that they're short and sweet to the point. If somebody has it where they have their email address, you can click on that button and it'll launch an email address for you. And so you can go from there. When you're dropping that email address, you can reference and say, found you on Instagram, was really impressed by what you're doing there, especially with software developers or with marketers. I've had the most success hiring sales for those two particular roles, not so much for sales on Instagram. And then on Twitter, Twitter is much more of a long game. I haven't had success on Twitter in so long. My last hire from Twitter, I cannot remember his name is Aaron Hahn, and his handle is Kosher Seabass, and that is how I first reached out to him was via Twitter. I liked some of his content, and then I got a follow back, and so I was able to send him a DM. The person who I would really talk to about Twitter recruiting is either Aaron Matthew or Steve Levy, because Aaron just published an article on something called Tweet Beaver that allows you to. It's a really cool article. I would Google Aaron Matthew and Tweetbeaver, and it will explain to you how you can use Twitter groups to really get the message out about what it is you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. And then Steve Levy has had a number of successful webinars about how to recruit people via Twitter. You can look his information up on Recruiting Inferno, and also find him on Instagram at Levy Recruits. Any more questions?
Last question is just about the list of 10 questions you send to candidates prior to on-site. Was there a link there in your slide for that one?
No, I don't have that. I can grab that, but that was, guys, that was about 7 years ago when I was a agency recruiter. I'd really have to look hard to find that, but I will try to find that for you.
Awesome. If you find it, just send it to me and we'll include it in the follow-up email.
Okay, no
So
worries.
we're good.
Okay, great. So real quick, we've got about wow, we've got about 16 slides left. So I know that people have got to jump off and what have you. We'll get the slide deck in the full recording. Those are a few of my tips for candidates that need a longer relationship. They need something longer to sell. So as we talk about this, you're going to want to measure your success. Everybody has a different definition of how they measure success, what the source of hire was, where they came through, what the cost was associated to that. As a young lady was talking to me about agency recruiting, one of the important areas there is the candidate to hire ratio. You want to understand how many candidates it takes you to submit to a hiring manager or to a requisition to get a hire. The lower the ratio, obviously, the better. I think that if you've got a good relationship with your hiring managers and that they're able to go through the scorecarding exercise with you, you'll find that you're going to have a much lower candidate to hire ratio. The conversion funnel. Where is Ryan Leary when I need him? The conversion funnel is really tracking candidates through every stage of the process, whether it's candidate sourced, to lead, to engaged, to phone interviewed, to on-site, what have you, so that you want to find out where candidates are dropping off in your process so you can really maximize that. You want to find out if people are asking, you're going to use this as a tool to figure out if people are asking the right questions of candidates. You're going to use this as a tool to make sure that there is no significant drop off between stages, and if there is, why that might be. Time to hire. Ultimately, people want us to have hired the person for this role 2 weeks ago. This is, a measure as to the time that it took you to find the candidate from that initial engagement to running them through the interview process. And then finally, there's creating a positive candidate experience, or CX. I think that Christine here at RentPath does an excellent job of this. What happens is, this is ultimately important about how people can change their mind if they have a lousy candidate experience. This is from LinkedIn's 2015 Talent Trends Report. I tried to find something in 2020, but all they wanted to do was talk about how much the network grew. They didn't want to talk about how much time people aren't spending on the site, but that's a conversation for another time. Ooh, jab. So while 83% of talent say a negative interview experience can change their mind about a role or a company they once liked, 87% of talent say that a positive interview experience can change their mind about a role or company that they once doubted, which means that if you're bringing somebody into your organization, making sure that they've got the right pre-candidate experience, it's making sure that they've got access to Glassdoor reviews, that you guys have already talked about that they've got a map to the office, that there's a plan for how that person is going to make their way to the organization. It's also going back to the career page and making sure that they're not jumping through a lot of different hoops to get there. It is making sure that the candidate feels welcome when they come on site. It's making sure that the interview process is seamless and is one that makes the candidate feel that they're walking into a professional environment. Certainly there are things that happen like code reviews or deployments that need to push an interview. So certainly depending upon if you're dealing with developers, working with them directly, more than likely they'll be able to understand that. You want to have a meeting once a month about what you're doing to improve candidate experience by taking all the interviews that you had that came in and deciphering what went right and what went wrong. And I would say that you're going to have that conversation a minimum of one time a month. We actually have it twice a month here. And there are 6 ways to ensure great candidate experience. I had to bring Thanos into this, right? And the Infinity Stones. Acting in their voice is making sure that you are responding to a candidate the way that they like to be talked to, that you're treating them in a professional capacity, that you are being their advocate if there's something that they really want that would make this opportunity jump out or stand out above all other opportunities. Shift response goals. If you tell a candidate that, hey, I'm going to get back to you by Thursday, do everything you can to get back to them by Wednesday. You constantly want to shift and constantly want to over deliver or deliver before their expectation is there. Let your brand guide you. If you're a consumer facing brand, you have to realize that every person that you come in contact with could at one point be a potential buyer. When I think about this, I think back to my days at Apple, is that I think that everybody has that there are Android people and there are Apple people, and there are people that really want to have a magical experience every time they have engagement with Apple. So I tried to deliver that through every single interview and make sure that everything was seamless and made sure that it was a better interview than a process that they had before. Training your interview teams. Are you just throwing people into a room and hoping that they are successful with interviews, or are you having monthly and quarterly interview reviews? Are you certifying your interviewers, making sure that they have been trained on how to interview? creative hellos. What does this mean? All right, well, does this mean that we're sending out clowns to say hello? No, this is actually an idea that we had about making sure that candidates were greeted both downstairs, that they were walked around, that they were shown the office, that they were introduced to people around the office before their interview ever began. And then finally, also guarantee that you're going to provide that 48-hour feedback. I know it's hard, but once you train everybody in your organization that they've got to get back to you within 24 hours, you're able to provide those next steps in a much quicker capacity to those individual candidates. And that was me trying to wrap up 16 slides in about 15 minutes so I could get everybody back to their day. Are there any other questions that I can answer? And
Well,
again,
if anybody has any, go ahead, Brian, sorry.
again, I really appreciate everybody bearing with me through my voice and what have you today. Kind of unexpected, but thank you for staying and being attentive and a great audience. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being on with us, Brian. We really, really appreciate you. That was fantastic. And there was no trying about you getting through all of those slides. You did it really, really, it was perfect. So I'm sorry about your voice. And I hope you feel better soon so that we can tie you down for another one. So thank you,
Instagram
everyone.
recruiting. It sounds like what we'll be doing next time, right?
That sounds like a necessary show for sure. Well, thank you everyone for being on. We will let you go. And just remember, we'll be doing another one next week with Batman.
Oh, really?
So yes, we have Mike Batman Cohen on the 19th at 2 o'clock.
That's going to be awesome. You guys need to check that out.
Yes, it's going to be fantastic. So keep an eye out for that link. It'll probably come into your inbox as well. If you have any further questions, feel free to send those over to Ashley at recruitingdaily.com. And it looks like Brian has dropped all of his contact info in there for you as well. So everyone make sure to call and text Brian.
Actually, the best way to reach me, and Ashley, you know this, is on Facebook Facebook Messenger. I do a lot of recruiting on it. I'm on it all the time. So if you've got any questions, concerns, considerations, feedback, let me have it. I'm very eager to communicate and work with everybody to help them make a better process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. And David, yes, we will send through all of the upcoming Batman webinar details. The email that you receive will have a link directly to the landing page. So, all right, everyone, have a wonderful day. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.